Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. This is Phil Stevens. You're on another episode of Iron Radio. I am a powerlifter, strength coach, football coach, many coaching things. So this was week one. We had our parents' meeting this week with the football team and got the football team rolling for next year. So
right on.
Yeah.
Nice. This is Dr. Mike C. Nelson, creator of the Flex Diet Cert, which opens again June 17th through June 24th, 2024. Go to flexdiet.com. And I am back. We got back late last night, so back home for the first time in almost 6 weeks.
There you go. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Feels good. You know, it's funny when you travel. It feels good to go, and it also feels good to come home.
It does.
And believe it or not, that is as far as we got before we had a technical meltdown and lost the episode. So what I'm going to do here this week, just so you have something to listen to in your car on the way to work, is offer the news portion of that episode, which deals with the power of bioactives. It's functional food stuff. The topic that we covered at the end of the show, after our usual mid-show break, was about women in strength sports. Maybe we'll just revisit that.
Strength and muscle sport news.
But having said that, let's just get you something here. This article is from the new IFT magazine. A lot of listeners know that I am a member of the Institute of Food Technologists. This one is by Danielle Bertrot. And bear with me, there's some interesting stuff here. If you're interested in dietary supplements, you're probably also interested in functional foods. But, you know, there are some caveats with getting a lot of these things into foods. I mean, they have to taste good and that kind of thing. Anyway, so this starts off by saying, move over vitamins. Bioactives are the new frontier of functional ingredients. Bioactives, of course, small molecules, compounds from plants, fungi, aquatic sources. And there's been this surge of interest in these bioactives and their potential health benefits. This topic is where the industry is at right now, says food chemist and researcher Taylor Wallace, a member of the Bioactives Coalition, which is a group that was formed to promote awareness of these bioactives. It says, as an editor of 3 scientific journals, Wallace says he's seen a steady flow of new submissions on this topic. I myself have submitted some stuff on coffee bioactives. Some listeners know chlorogenic acid, right? There's caffeic acid, and there's trigonylene in coffee, all these coffee bioactives. It's not just liquid caffeine, of course. That's the kind of thinking that we're talking about here. And just some definitions, it says bioactives differ from classical nutrients associated with deficiency diseases, right? You don't get enough of the vitamin or mineral, and then you get the deficiency disease. You don't get enough vitamin C, you get scurvy, right? You don't get enough thiamine, you get beriberi. You don't get niacin, you get pellagra. You get the idea. That's not what we're talking here, but it still doesn't change the fact that they can affect enzymes and hormones and your metabolism in different ways and have health benefits. So it's not an essential nutrient. Only about 1% of useful bioactives have been identified, according to Jan Willem van Klinken, Senior Vice President of Medical, Scientific, and Regulatory Affairs at the bioscience startup Brightseed. There's a name you might want to keep your eye out for in the future, Brightseed and some of these bioactives. But what are some of these bad boys? Well, lutein, for example, has been linked to eye health and also like mental processing and that kind of thing. It's not just macular degeneration. It is true that some of these bioactives, lutein, will accumulate in the retina of your eye. And that also is a way to kind of indirectly get the idea that it's also accumulating perhaps in your brain. I have some industry friends who swear by leucine for like a cognition booster kind of thing. The article goes on to talk about how resveratrol has been linked to cardiovascular health. I've also seen data on hydroxytyrosol from olives. I mean, it's kind of a mind-blowing idea that, you know, you might be able to eat a dozen olives or so and get enough of these sort of mitochondria assisting antioxidant type of phytochemicals to improve heart health or other kinds of health. It goes on to say, earlier this year, Brightseed teamed up with hemp brand Manitoba Harvest on the launch of a fiber supplement that's formulated with bioactive fiber found in hemp hulls. That's interesting. Now, you might say, if they're not vitamins and minerals and they don't have like an RDA or a DRI, right, a recommendation for a nutrient, right, something we need, then how do companies do this? And there's a little piece in here that just talks about how companies formulate products using bioactives. They want to document the benefits through a structure function claim. So the way I always think about this is may help support a healthy, skeleton, something like that. May help support healthy X, cardiovascular function or immune health. You get the idea. That kind of specific language you have to be very careful with, and there are regulatory teams, like almost FDA experts at food companies, and I know some. I've worked with some of these guys and gals. That's their job, is we don't want to step on toes or get a warning letter from the FDA, for example. Producers can also take the GRAS, you might have heard of GRAS, generally recognized as safe designation. GRAS just means expert consensus that an ingredient is safe when used properly. Now, they can also do self-GRAS determination. That's their own process, saying, hey, look, we don't need to point at another company getting GRAS status for this compound, this phytochemical, right, this bioactive. We're due self-GRAS determination. So essentially, this article points out something that I've talked about for years in the classroom. There's only two things, well, not only, but there are principally two things that you think about that you want to back up. One is efficacy at a certain dose, and the other is safety. So despite all of the cool stuff, dietary supplements or functional foods are usually less dramatic. But everything that they say, you're asking, is it safe? Is it effective? If you listen to any episodes of Nutrition Radio, the other podcast that I did in 2023, you'll know that that's, important. The article goes on. Wallace thinks that there are a few other bioactives, he mentions lutein, and anthocyanins, so think blue in blueberries, that are ready for intake recommendations because there's that much evidence for the possibility that they could have health benefits. Bright Seeds Van Klinken says that developing daily recommendation intakes, right, daily recommended intakes, DRI, for different bioactives, though, is very challenging. It's very costly. It's very time prohibitive. I mean, when you see something like, there's the DRI for a particular vitamin or mineral, boy, there are reams of data behind that. So it's not easy to do. But the food industry is interested. Representative from Glanbia pointed out that they are, in fact, a selling point. For example, if you have a protein bar, you could add a bioactive to make it that kind of plus up to that protein bar. So interesting stuff. I would probably buy protein bars if they had something like chlorogenic acid or extra trigonylene or something like that. Just a few weeks ago on the podcast, we talked about trigonylene from coffee being anabolic in nature. You foodies can appreciate this, though. Supplement makers generally don't have to worry about flavor, maybe other than chewable supplements, for example, because there are sensory attributes that can change. Like caffeine makes things bitter. We talked about that the other week. It imparts bitterness. So there are certain things that you can't put in certain foods so very easily without the right flavors masking it, or texture, something like that. Aroma can change. Processing methods, the article goes on, says are also important because that can change the food matrix. The food matrix matters. Now, for example, think about like coffee. If you want to put milk in coffee, coffee is already a complex matrix of hundreds of compounds. You put milk in there. I've seen some data that suggests that enhances the antioxidant effects, some that it might interfere. So lots of things that go on in making a specific bioactive or, plant chemical, zoochemical, this important non-nutrient, if you will, but beneficial non-nutrient work. This food technology article just rounds out, again, by Danielle Bertrot, saying that there is a niche segment of consumers who are willing to pay for new products with these plus up, right, bioactives in them. Whether, it's something that could enhance cardiovascular health or cognition and eye health or immune boost. Obviously, that was a huge thing the FDA was looking very closely at over the peak years of the pandemic. But during the episode that we lost, we actually talked about that. I was asking Mike and Phil, for example, would you pay more for one of these, bioactive plus up kinds of foods, or would you rather just go, eat your salmon and eat your olives and drink your coffee and that kind of thing? So we'll revisit that next week as part of the news clip. That's all I'm going to bore you with this week. That was our news segment. I can't really get into a lot of the women in strength sports idea. We'll probably just revisit that again. There's a huge surge of women in strength sports. Phil had some news about world record being broken from a female competitor, and that just led us into this conversation about how, girls wrestling, like in youth sports, obviously women's powerlifting. We talked about how that related to women's bodybuilding, and it was opposite in some ways. But we'll probably revisit that again, and I guess we'll just see you next week. Thanks for tolerating the technical glitch. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.